Thank you for joining me on the Alliance for Unity platform for a discussion about how we see the current situation in Scotland just 5 months before the epic Holyrood elections are scheduled, at least in May. It's been some time since I addressed you from this platform. My colleagues have been standing in various forms in the preceding weeks. I hope that you will find what I have to say this evening interesting. Certainly the Scottish media are already finding it so. Scotland is in a very unhealthy situation, both literally and metaphorically. Literally, of course, we remain stricken by the coronavirus pandemic to a degree almost unmatched anywhere in the world, made worse by the calculated and organized mendacity of the Scottish government about the scale of our problem, and the complicity, the active complicity in some cases, merely complicity by omission in others, of the mainstream media in Scotland, for the most part, some exceptions, but by people in England who hate Boris Johnson and Brexit so much that they are prepared to love Nicola Sturgeon, warts and all, without looking very closely at those warts in any case. The truth is, our response to the coronavirus has led to the third worst outcome in the entire world. And if you're hearing that for the first time, that's because of the complicity and, in the latter case, the venality of the people who run our broadcasting and print media operations in this country. If you're hearing for the first time that there is no country of 5 million anywhere in the world with a worse outcome on the coronavirus, then that's for the same reason. And it is, of course, the truth. Andrew Wilson infamously said that his ambition for our country was that in 25 years' time, we'd be like Denmark. Hasn't cottoned on to the fact that Scottish death rates are 10 times the death rates in Denmark. That's right, 10 times worse. In fact, if you go across the European Union and look at the small European countries with whom Scotland, under the SNP, frequently likes to make comparisons, the comparison is simply ruinous. We have suffered not just from the desperate wish of the so-called Scottish government to lie about the true facts that were staring the sentient in the face, but to cover up facts that would have spoken to the contrary. The cover-up of the Nike conference is, in my opinion, an act of a criminal act, an act that should be subject to the law. The sending of thousands of our elderly people to perish in unprotected care homes, so-called, is equally a criminal act, an act on which the police should be acting. And we relied upon the great investigative journalism organ of the Sunday Post to reveal to us that this was in direct response to Scottish government ministerial order. No doctor, no advisor sent those old people into the canyons of horror that our care homes became. This was a direct order from Scottish government ministers. The facts are the facts are the facts, Miss Freeman, and the facts are that you sent 2,000 of our older people to perish in care homes where there was no protection for them, including in a large number of cases, people who were known to be suffering from the coronavirus. These are the facts, which are the facts, and will remain the facts always. And I don't know why you are still at large, never mind still a minister, drawing a ministerial salary from the bloated ministerial trough in Holyrood. We have suffered from the economic damage of areas that should have been closed down but weren't, areas in Scotland that were closed down but shouldn't, areas now in a ludicrous 5-tier system that nobody understands, where people are suffering from the economic knock-on effects from a bewildering array of anti-coronavirus measures which simply haven't worked. The purpose, of course, of the 5-tier fiasco was merely to differentiate ourselves from the rest of the United Kingdom in the vainglorious, faux patriotic, bugle blowing that is the SNP at Holyrood. Flags, bugles, straw hats and trumpets, and promises, always promises, of another referendum just around the corner, like a carrot tied in front of a donkey's nose, hoping that the donkey will trot forever after a carrot it will never have. Nicola Sturgeon, far from being a knight in shining armor, is a thoroughgoing disaster so far as the coronavirus is concerned. And the fact that most of our compatriots don't know that is a matter for everlasting shame. Shame on the media, yes, but shame also on those paid handsomely to be the opposition to the SNP government at Holyrood. If I had been at Holyrood, if I had been a leader of an opposition party, what I have just adumbrated would be far more widely known in the land. But far too many of the paid opposition at Holyrood are far more concerned by continuing to be the paid opposition at Holyrood than in exposing, in a way that would get them shunned in the Holyrood White Heather Club, the shortcomings, failings, and even crimes of the government they are supposed to be opposing. Because, of course, the shadows which have fallen across our land are not merely the shadow of the coronavirus. The shadow of corruption, the shadow of an unhealthy concentration of power, not just in one city, not just in one party, in one government, but in one family, is redolent of the Romania about which I wrote 30 years ago with my friend Bob Wiley when we produced a book called Downfall, the Ceausescus and the Romanian Revolution. Not since Nicolae and Elena Ceausescu have one husband and wife concentrated so much power unto their own hands, at least so far as I am aware. I was one of the last British parliamentarians to visit Dr. Hastings Banda in his dotage in Malawi. And the late president and his gruesome wife were another comparator that I can never quite erase from my mind. Which one is Dr. Banda and which one is the grasping wife? I can't yet say. I'm not privy to the bedchamber of the first couple of Scotland. But I do know this, that in no healthy democracy would power be so concentrated in one husband and wife team. And it is a mark of shame on the SNP that they have allowed this to come to pass. Everybody knows, just to state the bald facts, that that is not a healthy situation, especially when events happen in their matrimonial home of the gravest character, and the husband can rightly claim, I actually had no idea what was going on in my own living room. I have no idea why Alex Salmond's big arse was sitting on my sofa talking to my wife, because I never asked, because she was sitting talking to him in her capacity as head of the Scottish government. I'm only the chief executive of the SNP, which runs the government. I'm only the husband. It's only my sofa on which this is taking place, in my living room, in my house. But I knew nothing of which they spoke. If you believe that, frankly, you will believe anything, especially when Nicola is never quite clear about which capacity she is operating in and how she has managed to build a Chinese wall down the middle of her brain, in which some things are known to one as the head of government, but not known to one as the leader of the SNP, or vice versa. That is a shadow over Scotland. And it's time that people in the Scottish media and political class began calling that for what it is. It is a corrupt practice. It is a practice that may very well have concealed crimes. Crimes against Alex Salmond, but much more importantly, crimes against the justice system in Scotland. Another shadow that has fallen over our land is the position of the Lord Advocate, once upon a time regarded in Scotland as an entirely independent and supreme legal opinion that had the purpose of being a watchdog for the law in public life in the country. Nowadays, in our shrunken democracy, the Lord Advocate is now a mere party politician, sitting in an SNP cabinet, ruled with an iron fist by one person, the Chief Minister, the First Minister, Nicola Sturgeon. And I hear that much belatedly, the leaders of the opposition parties in the Scottish Parliament intend to raise this matter. It's long after time for having called time on this potential corruption of the Scottish legal system, the Scottish judiciary. Another shadow which falls across the land is the tragedy, now farce, of the Alex Salmond inquiry. How many times have you heard the SNP talk of the importance of, the sovereignty of, the centrality of the Scottish Parliament? But not when that Scottish Parliament votes to instruct the Scottish government, to which it is or should be accountable, to make available to the inquiry they set up to investigate what happened in the Alex Salmond affair. Despite the fact that Nicola Sturgeon repeatedly said she's one for repeatedly saying things and then not doing them, but it couldn't get much more serious than this one. She said that the Committee of Inquiry could have access to anything that it needed. I quote and accentuate, anything that it needed. But we have now reached the situation where, having cost the Scottish taxpayer the best part, if you add the costs altogether, never mind what they paid to Salmon's lawyers, but the cost of Scotland's government lawyers, the cost of Scotland's civil service time, the best part of £750,000 in public money in a losing case, the legal advice on which they will not publish, despite the committee's demand that they should. Nicola Sturgeon is about to spend even more of your money to defend their right not to publish a single paragraph in the documents demanded by the Scottish Parliamentary Committee inquiry. It must be one hell of a paragraph. If the SNP have nothing to hide in the Alex Salmond affair, why are they doing their best to make it look like they're hiding something? Why are they going to such extraordinary lengths to keep from the duly constituted inquiry the material that they need? By the way, our 18,000th follower has just followed the Alliance for Unity Twitter account, and I can announce that the 18,000th follower is Gary Winchester. Thank you, Gary. I said I'd give a shout out to the 18,000th follower. Why are they doing their best to make it look like the mother of all cover-ups? But the Alex Salmond affair, grave though it is again not the only shadow that has fallen over Scotland. The shadow of Humza Yousaf and his so-called hate crimes bill has fallen over our land too. Despite the opposition of the police, about whom more later, despite the opposition of the Faculty of Advocates, despite the opposition of the Roman Catholic Church and other church organizations, despite the opposition of any right-thinking journalist or free speaker anywhere in the land, Humza Yousaf is pressing on and pressing on with a hate crimes bill that will do nothing to curb actual hate crimes, but will generate a lot of work for the police, a lot of cases in the courts, and is likely to spread hatred across the land rather than curb it. And as I have mentioned to you before, this is not to curb racial hate crimes, of which there are mercifully few in Scotland. Our population is overwhelmingly white, as Humza Yousaf told us, as if he was spitting, as if he was swearing. Well, we apologize, Humza. We are, as it happens, overwhelmingly white and not nearly as predisposed as people in some other countries to racial hatred. No, the hate crimes that will be first off the rank, first out the traps, are hate crimes about religion, about sect, and about nomenclature. Hate crimes like using the wrong pronoun. As a matter of fact, probably the right pronoun, but not the hoped for pronoun, not the self-declared pronoun of individuals. Stating, as J.K. Rowling did, that only women menstruate. Stating, as J.K. Rowling did, that only women have a cervix, is a hate crime. under Hamza Yousaf's new law, demanding free and safe and independent spaces for girls and women, barring those spaces to men who have declared themselves to be women. It will be a hate crime under Hamza Yousaf's hate crimes bill. Now, I can think of nothing more likely to increase hate crime than an act of parliament like that. It will be a dripping roast for lawyers, no doubt. It will be a gigantic headache for the police, no doubt. But it will take an open razor across the beautiful face of Scotland and scar and disfigure us forever. And even at this 11th hour, as he shows absolutely no sign of listening to the wide range of opposition, I appeal to him to drop this nonsense, for nonsense is what it is. I said I'd come back to the police, and I do this with a degree of circumspection. I do this more in sorrow than in anger. But I already knew that concentrating all police power in one police force, under one chief of police, answerable to one first minister and her husband, was a bad idea. But when I see that the Scottish police have still not concluded their inquiry into the conduct of Margaret Ferrier MP, even though she publicly admitted to a crime, I get suspicious. I'm now suspicious of a potentially politicized police force under one party control, one family control. We all know about the WhatsApp messages of Mr. Murrell in regard to putting pressure on the police. I'm going to come back, of course, to Margaret Ferrier, but I restate what I have just said. The facts in the Margaret Ferrier case are not in dispute, not even by the SNP, not even by Margaret Ferrier. So why has it taken Police Scotland so long to conclude their inquiries into the super spreader act that she admits to having carried out? There's the shadow of unemployment. There's the shadow of child poverty. There's the shadow of underachievement in our education system. There's the shadow of dodgy deals over ferries and over other public investments. There's the shadow over the Prestwick Airport affair. There are many shadows that have fallen across Scotland. And all of those shadows have been cast under the one-party state of the SNP. For 13 and a half years they have ruled. 13 years of misrule that need to come to an end, even for the sake of the SNP. One-party states are never a good idea. They never have a happy ending. They always lead to corruption and malfeasance and rank incompetence and arrogance. And all of those things have happened in Scotland. That's why the Alliance for Unity's big idea still needs to be taken up. As the man who formed the Alliance for Unity and the man who came up with the big idea, let me restate it to you. Getting the SNP out of office in the elections next May is an urgent and necessary task for everyone of any political stripe, any and all political stripes operating on the Scottish political scene. There is nothing more important than that. Getting Douglas Ross as the First Minister of Scotland is not more important than that. Nor Richard Leonard, nor Willie Rennie. The interests of none of these parties, of all of these parties put together, is not as important as the urgent and pressing need to end one-party dictatorship in Scotland. And the only way that either Douglas Ross or Richard Leonard can ever become First Minister is in a government of national unity, produced by an electoral agreement between the three big parties to stand down their candidates in hopeless, unwinnable seats and urge their voters to vote for the best placed pro-unity candidate. This is not rocket science. I didn't have to be Einstein to come up with this idea. It is weekly, and this week in 3 constituencies, 3 by-elections in Scotland, in local government, will again, I am sure, prove that if the 3 big parties will not hang together, they will all hang separately. And the hangman, the hangwoman, on a minority vote will again be the SNP. Facts are cheers that win a ding. In Edinburgh last week, in Aberdeenshire the week before, the SNP won council seats when, if you add up the pro-union vote against them, they would have lost them. But they won them because the unionists were cutting each other's throat for their own selfish internal reasons. This is not rocket science. And if it happens again, if it happens in Edinburgh, in Ruth Davidson's constituency, where the Tories are the obvious best placed candidates, when Labour and the Liberal Democrats are also Rands, if they continue to put forward candidates in seats like Edinburgh Central, who will be the beneficiary? Angus Robertson, the next leader of the SNP in Holyrood, should he be elected. This is madness. It really is a kind of madness. We need a one-off, game-changing move by the 3 big unionist parties to stand down unwinnable candidates and get behind the candidate best placed to beat the SNP. And if these 3 parties make such a pact, they will win. They will win the election. They will win a majority in the Holyrood Parliament. They'll have more MSPs, not fewer. They'll have more. The SNP will have fewer. The Greens, in turn, will have fewer, as the knock-on to the list vote takes its obvious shape. And political boundaries, the political future of our country will be dramatically redrawn, reshaped, reformed. And Scotland can get off the hamster wheel. Scotland can get off the never-ending. And I say this to Boris Johnson, who, under the influence of the last person that sat upon him, has reinvented himself yet again. I don't know, he's going to hug a husky in the Arctic to show how green he is. Or he's going to start being nice to the SNP. I don't know what being nice means yet. But if it means conceding yet more power to a party in a parliament that has misused, even abused the powers they already have, I'm against it. I don't mind a bit of sweetness in the air, a bit more politeness, Boris. But if you're planning on giving the SNP more power in our country, then you'll have to do it over our dead bodies, because we will not support it. We don't believe in appeasement. Appeasement never works. Appeasement merely aggrandizes, makes more voracious, avaricious the party that one is seeking to appease. I don't need to go all that far back in history to give you examples of that. No, they don't need more powers in the Scottish Parliament. They're not even using all the powers that they have been given. Powers of taxation, powers over welfare, handed back to London. Imagine. They don't need more powers. They need more real opposition. An opposition that will defeat them and turf them from office. And that can only be done with a united opposition. United for Britain. United for Scotland in Britain. United for Scotland's best interests, which are overwhelmingly. And if I had time, I could delineate, I could list dozens, scores of examples, but others have already done so in my stead in previous weeks. It's in Scotland's interest to remain in Britain. It's in Britain's interest for Scotland to remain in Britain. And that is the unity that we seek. Now, I have 2 or 3 important announcements to make. And the first concerns a major development in candidate appointment by us. The danger has always been that the Alliance for Unity might look unbalanced, might look more right than left, or left than right. A bird must fly with 2 wings. And so it is with the greatest of pleasure that I can tell you that Jean Ann Mitchell has been appointed a candidate for the Alliance for Unity for the elections in May. Jean Ann Mitchell was twice the Labour parliamentary candidate in West Dumbarton. Jean Ann Mitchell reduced the SNP majority to just 2,000 in the general election of 2017. Jean Ann Mitchell is a significant figure in Labour movement politics in the west of Scotland and in Glasgow, in the greater Glasgow area. Jean Ann Mitchell, like me, is a trade unionist and a socialist. She's on the left and she's on the list for the Alliance for Unity at the elections in May. And she will not be the last significant figure from the Labour movement in Scotland to be so announced. If you want to stand as a candidate, by the way, representing the Alliance for Unity next May, then visit our website. That's www.allianceforunity.uk, 4 being the number, allianceforunity.uk, and you can click on Become a Candidate. Jean Ann, I can't tell you how welcome you are. And you are welcomed by people of all stripes inside the Alliance for Unity, who know, as I have stated, that we need to be representative of all political colors when we face the electorate in May, in the list elections, in every list constituency in Scotland, in every regional list. All 8 will be there with a full list of candidates. We hope, against hope, that this will be subject to negotiation with the other pro-unity parties in Scotland. But with 5 months to go, we can't hang around. We have to act on the assumption that the worst will happen and that the pro-Britain parties will let the anti-Britain party win again for their own selfish, narrow interests. The second important announcement that I have to make is that having founded the Alliance for Unity only a few months ago, and now we're at 18,000 followers, and making the political weather in many ways in Scottish politics, and still 5 months to go. Having myself created this thing, I have decided I'm going to stand aside as the leader of the Alliance for Unity in favor of our deputy leader, Jamie Blackett, who is still running with me on the list in South Scotland. Both of us will be facing the electorate in South Scotland, along with others. I've come to know and respect Jamie Blackett so much. He's a former military man, a major, an officer, a planner, a strategist, and his military and strategic mind has persuaded me that, well, there's a reason why a striker is very rarely the team captain, because it's the striker's job to score the goals, not to organize all the others in the team around them. Jamie Blackett is a midfield general. He is masterful in how he goes about, step by step, organizing the victory for the Alliance in the elections in May. And so it seemed to me it would be far better for that and reasons of the mega fundraising that we need to now embark upon, and him being, well, slightly to the right of me, with slightly better access to the people in Scotland with money than me, that he would be a better leader, taking us up to these elections than me, leaving me to concentrate on scoring goals. And as Craig Brown, when picking me as striker for the Scottish parliamentary football team, once said, I'm putting George up front. He's scored for Scotland all over the world. I'm no longer playing world politics. Between now and May, I'm playing only Scottish politics. And I intend to score goals, some of which, the likes of which, you have not seen me score before in the elections to Holyrood in May. But there's another reason, other than those two, that I'm stepping aside. I will be the Alliance for Unity candidate in the Rutherglen and Hamilton West parliamentary by-election. What by-election, you may ask? Margaret Ferrier, despite admitting to what she did, spreading the virus throughout Parliament, throughout the chamber, throughout the tea room, to all the police officers on duty inside the palace, has still not stepped down, but she will. I'm here to tell you, I'm absolutely confident that she will. She either will of her own volition, or she will on the demand of 8,100 of her constituents who will recall her by statutory petition once the Standards and Privileges Committee of the House of Commons suspends her for at least 10 working days, and thus triggering the statutory process of recall. And as one of the architects of Zach Goldsmith's bill, which became the Act, a signatory on the face of the bill, I'm very happy to say I'm absolutely confident that we are going to trigger that statutory recall process, and that in an afternoon, if not, then in a weekend, we will gather those 8,100 signatories in Rutherglen and Hamilton West for her recall. I have in place in the constituency not just an election agent, from this week, not just an election headquarters, but a team of campaigners in both Hamilton West and in Rutherglen that are going to take the SNP by storm. A discredited, disgraced SNP MP having to be dragged screaming and kicking out of office will not be circumstances conducive to the SNP holding that seat. Now, of course, as we've said all along, if the big parties conclude a pact between themselves for this by-election, but also for the Holyrood elections in May, we will happily stand aside. But if my auntie had a beard, she'd be my uncle. And there seems to be no chance of that pact being concluded, leaving us with no choice but to demonstrate the Alliance for Unity are the best hammer of the SNP. That I, as the founder of the Alliance for Unity, have no peer in my ability to challenge, take on, and defeat the SNP in argument, in the media, on the television, on the streets of Scotland. If you know a better one, tell me, and I'll acknowledge I'm in second place to them. Go on, tell me, who's better at fighting the SNP in Scottish politics today than me? Go on, tell me. And as such, we are right now launching the biggest crowdfunder in Scottish electoral history for any by-election. We are seeking £100,000 from the public to fight and defeat the SNP in the Rutherglen Hamilton West by-election. It's live now. crowdfunder.co.uk/Galloway 4 Rutherglen, number 4, Galloway 4 Rutherglen. Of course, the expense limit in the by-election is £100,000, and we intend to spend £100,000 on defeating the SNP in that by-election. Any money that we don't spend in Rutherglen and Hamilton West will go to the Alliance for Unity election fund for the Holyrood elections in May. So you'll either be helping me defeat the SNP in a Westminster by-election, or you'll be helping the Alliance defeat the SNP in the Holyrood elections next May. I think it's worth the time and the trouble and the money to go there now and make your pledge. I hope I've persuaded you that the shadows that have fallen across our land must be dispelled. Sunlight is the best disinfectant. And I give you this promise. If elected to Holyrood, if elected to Westminster, I and we will shine the brightest of lights into the darkest of corners over the 13 and a half disgraceful years of SNP rule in Scotland. Thank you for watching the Alliance for Unity broadcast this evening.